Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War, Warhammer 2, quick match gameplay. This time around we are playing on the map Kek Buftar as the Dawi against the Dark Elves. And this is definitely a bit of a recurring theme. If you choose Dwarves in quick match, there's a very good chance you will immediately be counterpicked by Dark Elves, and I'm not sure why this is. I think it's probably because of the boatloads of armor-piercing shooting that the Dark Elves bring to the table. Regardless, it is rather frustrating to deal with, and so on the other hand, though, it has given me the opportunity to test out a bunch of trollish and ridiculous builds. So, this time around, I am bringing Belegar Ironhammer for my Lord. He is rather cheap. He does have some pretty cool abilities. He does have the Mighty Oathstone. He does have Rally, Revenge Incarnate, which is a single cast melee attack and weapon damage buff. He also does have the Hammer of Engrand, which when his leadership's below, or when his leadership is above 50%, he basically has a stupidly powerful version of Frenzy. Alongside him, I did actually bring a Master Engineer. I really wanted to try this out. I didn't figure my opponent would bring the build he did bring, and I thought, I'll try a double Organ Gun backed up by a Master Engineer. Master Engineer is not very popular. He doesn't have any snares. He doesn't have great melee stats, and he tends to get blocked a lot when you're trying to have him shoot. Doesn't have the most ammo either, but I figured I'll give him a shot. I know that I don't really try him all too often, and so here's what he looks like now. He does have extra powder for that extra damage, ballistics calibration, which is boosts the accuracy and reload skill of nearby artillery pieces or shooting in general. Entrenchment, which is a cool little physical resist and armor-piercing damage buff. However, it's important to keep in mind that this actually prevents your units from moving. It's basically a self-snare for 44 seconds, so definitely a bit risky. But I figured that my opponent wouldn't bring arty, so I'd be safe to use it. And then the Firing of Thori, this actually got moved from the Dwarf Lord over to the Master Engineer. And this is a cool little ability that can kind of sweep down a line of infantry. It's a very narrow arc, but it can do a lot of damage to squishy targets. For the rest of my composition, double organ guns, of course, a whole bunch of miners because I really didn't have that much cash to spend on infantry because of my shooting contingent. A unit of Slayers, a unit of Dragonback Slayers, just to protect my backline. 2 units of Thunderers. These guys, of course, do have some decent AP range stats. And then Norgrumling's Ironbreakers. And of course, Norgrumling's Ironbreakers are just a very powerful anchor that can kind of hold my line together if all else goes south. So my opponent decided to kind of troll me here with a crazy heavy artillery build. 4 units of Reaper Bolt Throwers. You can see they're already teeing off with their waves of fire. And these guys both outrange organ guns and can tear them to shreds with their single shots. So I definitely need to push up and be aggressive this game, which is bad because my build was not really designed to be aggressive. The rest of my opponent's army, besides those bolt throwers, is a bunch of chariots. Malekith on a chariot over here with Soul Stealer, Chillwind, and Power of Darkness. 2 Cold One chariots. Obviously, with their AP, high mass, high armor, these guys are going to be very tough to stop. Unless, of course, I can get them to rampage, in which case they'll be very easy to stop. And then 3 units of Arcaneth Executioners, single unit of Bleak Swords, and double Dark Shards. They're actually the unshielded variant, so a little surprising, but with the increase to the cost on the shielded variant, that's not entirely surprising. You can see my poor miners are just getting annihilated by those waves of fire, but I'm trying to expend their ammo a little bit and definitely kind of getting that out of my opponent here. You can see I've already managed to waste a few of the rounds on these Reaper Bolt Throwers over here, but they are just getting pounded and destroyed. And one of the important things to keep in mind as well is that when the Reaper Bolt Throwers, after they've kind of fired their few volleys, they start doing less damage because your units get all dispersed and the scatter shot it just isn't as accurate. Over here, the Norgrumling's Ironbreakers did get clipped a little bit, and I'm going to pull them out of range and start pushing up the rest of my army. So the beginning is really just mostly positioning and slowly but surely pushing forward, trying to get my organ gun into firing position. And I'm not going to try to counter battery my opponent's arty. I'm going to lose that battle no matter what I do. And I'm figuring I really need to kill those Arcaneth Executioners because otherwise this game is as good as lost. I'm going to pop my ballistics calibration here so that I can get the most out of my artillery. You can see that reload speed is going to go up by a whole bunch. Their damage is being increased by a whole bunch, and you can see just how fast they're going to be tearing through these Arcaneth Executioners. And because my opponent is stacked in these dense ranks, you can see how they're piercing into those Dark Shards, killing Dark Shards here, and destroying the Bleak Swords, of course. And so my opponent's taking some massive damage here because of his formation. Over here, the Thunders are also pushing forward, trying to get into position, but that's going to allow my opponent to... But unfortunately, I haven't brought my Slayers up fast enough. My advance has been definitely a bit haggard. I kept my Slayers in the back, and that was definitely a big mistake, and I'm going to be paying for that shortly. Over here, you can see the Bleak Swords, though, taking to pound down. The Arcaneth Executioners beaten down horribly, and I'm shifting fire to the second unit of Arcaneth Executioners, trying to whittle them down. I don't have Runes of Wrath and Ruin, so I really need to kill them with artillery here, because if I don't, this is going to be GG. You can see the damage is definitely immense. It's tearing through them, going straight through to those dark shards, and even hitting some of the crewmen on the Reaper bolt throwers. That is obviously not the intent. So organ guns are very powerful. You just have to be aware that they are going to lose a counter battery fight like this. Where the Thunders do get a nasty volley into the Cold One Chariots, and I do try to position the miners to interfere here, but it's really not going to be enough. You can see the organ guns are destroying these 2 units of organ executioners, but they are being shut down in turn. You can see this one's already down to 1 gun, and it's not going to be long for this world. Over here, my guns are getting overrun by the chariots because I pushed them too far up front without paying attention, and I don't have the slayers on point, so these guys are just getting annihilated and run over. In the meantime, the miners are collapsing, but I don't really care about the miners too much. I'm trying to strip down the chariots as best as I can because they're really the priority target here. My artillery is firing some last defiant shots here into the Organized Executioners, trying to break down these 2 heavy infantry units, and unfortunately this last organized unit is going to be untouched because my opponent's artillery fire is just so overwhelming, and you can see it's really destroying my organ guns here and making life difficult. That said, these Organized Executioners are going to be buckled. These dark shards are really in really bad shape, and Organized Iron Breakers are going to be able to start satchel charging this last unit of Organized Executioners. You can see they knock them down by about 1,000 in a single volley. Now the miners are pushing forward, trying to intercept the charges. I don't want the Northern Iron Breakers fighting it yet. I want to get as much as I can out of their satchel charges, but I'm not going to quite achieve that before they get closed on by the Organized Executioners. Over here, though, the Dwarf Warriors are actually going to beat down the Organized Executioners, thanks to how badly they were pounded before. And the Thunderers some are getting back online and helping whittle down the Organized Executioners over here. So things are definitely not looking too atrocious, except for this single unit of Organized Executioners and the 2 chariots who are definitely taking me to Pound Town. I'm trying to get my Dragonback Slayers in position as fast as I can. I do fire a volley here into Malekiths, but it's not enough, and I have now lost both of my organ guns, which means I have about 2,000 gold in the ditch, because those units offline are no longer helping me, whereas my opponent only really lost a single unit of Organized Executioners from all that fire. That said, I'm whittling down Malekith, who is trying his best to whittle down the Organized Ironbreakers, who he recognizes as one of the biggest threats left on the field. And the Thunderers are desperately trying to shut down the Cold One Chariots, but unless I can get them to rampage, they're just going to keep running amok, and I'm not going to be able to shut them down. That said, the Slayers are hitting them, and if I can just get these guys to rampage, then I will be able to shut them down for good. And you can see their HP is tanking. My opponent isn't quite able to push through the Slayers. Dwarf mass increases have definitely been very valuable here, and they do rampage, which means they're going to be slaughtered to a man very easily by the Slayers. Slayers are just so good at tearing these guys, taking them to Pound Town. You can see those poor dinos over there trying to slug it out with the Slayers, and I'm trying to get my Thunders clear and out of the way as well. You can see over here the Dragonback Slayers applying some pressure, and over here the Master Engineer is going to hold his ground here, try to slug it out with some Organized Executioners. My opponent does cast a Soul Stealer, but of course Dwarves do have that built-in magic resist, and I'm throwing Belegar into the fray with all of his buffs popped, trying to do as much as he can to these annoying Organized Executioners before they slaughter all my Dwarf Warriors. Over here, the Northern Ironbreakers, despite being badly mauled, are going to engage on these Organized Executioners and Bleak Swords, and hopefully be able to beat them down. And the miners, a handful of miners have gotten into the backline and are tying down the Dark Shards and some of the enemy shooting. Unfortunately, though, you can see the projectiles here still whittling down my poor Slayers. You can see there who are trying to pursue the Cold Ones, but I make a huge mistake here. I'm just going to let these chariots, or at least Slayers, keep pursuing the chariots long after they should come back. Over here, these chariots are also running amok, kind of slaughtering my poor Thunders, but the Dragonback Slayers are hot in pursuit, and once again, the Dwarf mass increases. It means that the Dwarves are much harder to push through, and these Slayers are going to get on top of them and cause another rampage, and that's going to give me an opportunity to pull the Thunderers out and pull these Cold One Chariots down to earth. In the meantime, over here, Northern's Ironbreakers slugging it out with Organized Executioners, not having the best time of it, of course. The Organized Executioners are specialized against these sorts of units, but the Northern's Ironbreakers do outnumber them, and they are going to hit just hard enough to slowly but surely chip away at these guys. You can see they even throw some satchel charges there, which is fairly pointless, but hey, they try. In the meantime, my opponent's backline is constantly being compromised by my own miners. Obviously, both sides here went very heavy into shooting, and as a result, didn't invest so much into units that could actually defend the backline. My opponent probably figured that it's not really a risk with the Dwarves. Regardless, despite my Master Engineer being in an atrocious state here, we do manage to beat down the Organized Executioners and push through. Unfortunately, I have no units capable of pursuing these troops. I can't pursue the Organized Executioners, I can't really pursue the Bleak Swords. All these units that flee are basically going to get away. And as you can see, these Slayers are just going to keep chasing after this routed unit, and I'm wasting my time here with a with a very critical unit. You guys are still over half HP, they're still got the majority of their models on the field, and I'm just letting them run amok and not helping my main line. Though that said, Organized Executioners are getting slaughtered, despite the fact that my opponent is shelling me down. And Billigar is very tanky. He does have 120 armor. He's a very tough target for units like artillery, even if they had ammo left, which they're slowly losing. Normally, his Outbreakers are going to rout here, but my opponent isn't actually going to pursue them, I don't believe. See Bellegarde just running amok, trying to get into that back line and shut down these Dark Shards. I actually realized the repurpose at this point have basically used up all their ammo, so I don't have to worry about them. So really the critical point here is to get rid of the Dark Shards. That said, you can see Dwarf Warriors here are going to rout, and because I forgot about those normal Slayers, and I only just now realized that I have them and I'm trying to get them back. I'm in a bad spot, and I just don't have that NTLRs that I really need. Maybe trying to push the Master Engineer here into position to try to get shots, but he does tend to get obstructed, and my opponent does actually prevent me from pursuing here with the Chill Wind, so definitely some good usage out of it. You can see the Master Engineer taking some pot shots at my opponent's troops. He's only gotten 8 shots off this entire game, which kind of shows how difficult it is to get shots out of him. And this is really why he's not a common pick. You can see he does get a little shot there into Malekith, but he doesn't have magic projectiles. He's not guaranteed to hit. He doesn't do that much damage per shot. He's just not that good of a hero in general, despite being pretty cool in appearance and all that. And you can see even misses there on Malekith, who does plow through these Thunderers. Over here, though, I have managed to beat off the Hargan Executioners, and this really is kind of ending my opponent's chances. Norgum's Ironbreakers came back. My opponent's best infantry to counter my infantry is gone, and his artillery has expended all their ammunition, or most of their ammunition, and is not able to get back on their guns. So only these handful of Dark Shards remain. This unit's routing completely, and my opponent really doesn't have the shooting. He's basically just relying on Malekith running amok here. And I'm getting my normal Slayers here on top of Malekith, though they don't. It looks like they don't actually really like hit him. They just chase him. They're kind of trying to get him. They're struggling. Poor little guys. They're struggling to find him. Thunders do open up a little bit, but there's so few Thunders left at this point that they're really not going to be able to do that much to him. He just plows straight through him, kills a few, and he's going to keep pushing because he doesn't want to get stuck on the Slayers, because that would be the end for him. The 2 Organ Gun crews are still around kicking because, of course, that Dwarven Resilience, they're not going to break just because of a little issue like losing all of their artillery fire. You can see all these Organ Guns just destroyed here, blown apart by the Reaper fire. But the Thunderers are still teeing off on Malekith, who is now deciding to pursue my Master Engineer off the field. And things are definitely decisively in my favor at this point. My opponent's artillery crews here are not going to stop a unit of Angry Dragonback Slayers at all. These Dark Shards couldn't do that, even if they did turn around to shoot here. And so my opponent's infantry here, or if you want to call it infantry, is definitely pushing description there, is going to rout off. All of these troops are simply going to get wiped and forced to flee. Unfortunately, I do decide to pursue some of these troops, and I kind of split my attention here, so these Dragonback Slayers are not going to be coming back just quite yet to help deal with Malekith, who does finish off my Master Engineer here. So we're going to throw things into fast forward for the last minute of the battle here, as we basically do some cleanup. Malekith, of course, does try to plow through the artillery crews, which, quite frankly, I don't care about. The artillery crew, they're not good melee stat-wise, even though they might be better than normal crews. And here what I do is, right before my opponent plows in, I do pop the Mighty Oathstone. It does give you extra expert charge defense, which is pretty cool. I'm actually... so this actually gives you charge defense against all, and it's actually... it even affects shooting units. It affects all units. This is one of the. This is definitely a cool little ability that I think is kind of underestimated, and I personally didn't really notice until I was using it. If you look at a lot of the other charge defense bonuses, for example, Hold the Line for Empire Captains, it's plus 100% charge defense, but what that means is that it improves your mass against the charge. It means that if your captain's sitting alongside a bunch of spears, it means that, and they're braced, they already have all that bonus to their bracing from the fact that they're stacked on top of one another, from the fact that they're braced, from the fact that they've been standing still, all this stuff. Whatever depth, the mass depends on depth for your infantry units. If your infantry unit is deeper, it's got more mass, and that will double that mass again. So you will still take the full brunt of the charge bonus, but you are able to kind of stop a unit in its tracks. Expert charge defense negates the charge bonus, which is actually huge. It means that, for example, when my opponent just plowed through my Thunders there, the Thunders probably didn't take too much damage, because Chariot's charge bonus is basically where most of this damage comes from, and when you brace, you negate a lot of that. So looking back on the stats, you can see definitely some interesting things, I guess. The miners performed surprisingly well, just at swamping my opponent. My opponent didn't have a huge front line. He only had a handful of Hargan Executioners and Bleak Swords, and he was really relying on those Cold One Chariots to do the deed. But with the miners in there, I basically oversaturated him and was able to start shutting down those Dark Shards, who would have otherwise been a major pain in the rear. Because the Reapers did expend most of their ammo, but those Dark Shards, had they been able to keep firing, would have been able to probably bring down my Norcomman's Ironbreakers, beat down my Slayers enough and that sort of stuff, and that would have been a huge problem for me. I made some serious issues or mistakes with my sort of deployment. I was too greedy with my Thunder push forward, trying to get shots in, and that got them swamped by cold ones. And the fact that I didn't bring a counter battery tool, and perhaps I should, and this is definitely something I should have considered, is perhaps bringing the Goblobber here instead of bringing the 2 units of Thunders, maybe just a unit of Quarrelers and the Goblobber. Is that I wasn't able to counter battery at all. So definitely, my opponent had the huge artillery advantage here and was just able to pick apart my organ guns and set himself up for really advantageous fight, because Harkness Executioner is always much better than anything I have here in straight up melee. That said, Belegar was a champ, able to just tank out damage. The Dragonback Slayers and the Slayers managed to shut down my opponent's Cold One Chariots in relatively efficient manner. The Norgleman's Ironbreakers, of course, the usual tanks that they are, did great. Dwarf Warriors did manage to do some damage as well. And the Thunders did help shut down some of those key armored units. They managed to get rid of some of the Harkness Executioners and once again help with the Cold One Chariots, which is critical. And the Organ Guns were probably the key factor. I think Organ Guns are very potent. If your opponent does a very condensed formation like what my opponent did here, which is understandable given that he didn't have a lot of troops, just trying to cover everything with that few troops is difficult. But when you do that sort of formation, you open yourself up to the Organ Guns being brutally potent, and you could see that when they were plowing through the Harkness Executioners into the Bleak Swords, into the Dark Shard. They were basically getting triple hits or 3 hits on each unit, so that's really pretty impressive. You can see the kill count in just a few seconds before these guys were knocked out. These guys knocked out 174 models, and a lot of those were Harkness Executioners, so they were definitely, I think that despite everything, they actually probably paid for themselves, or paid close for themselves, despite being focused out by all these Reapers. Nonetheless, great game to my opponent, Michelle here. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. It was a lot of fun, just trying to slay it out, and when I saw that army, I was definitely not feeling good about my chances, but it was a lot of fun just trying to sort of build with an Organ Gun. Definitely don't recommend the Master Engineer. It was worth trying him out, but I think that a Runesmith or a Thane with a Tormentor sword would have been much more valuable for this composition. If you guys have any comments, criticism, anything like that, anything you'd like to share, be sure to post down in the comments, and I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye for now.